With the recent release of Monster the Ed Gein Story, I was a little underwhelmed with how the story of the serial killer was delivered. It was a bit of a mess, it was inaccurate, and many things that Ed Gein did in the show were exaggerated or just an outright lie. After researching the real Ed Gein, it got me looking at the other movies that have been made about him over the years, and the most popular feature about him was created in the year 2000, titled Ed Gein in the Light of the Moon. After watching that, I wanted to compare the Ryan Murphy series to the movie, compare the accuracy of them, their similarities, differences, and determine which one was better. Here is the Ed Gein Netflix show versus the Ed Gein movie. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers from both of them. The Portrayal of Ed Gein. When it came to the depiction of Ed Gein, both Charlie Hunnam and Steve Railsback both did very good jobs when it came to performing them. One thing that stood out most with the Netflix show was the voice that Hunnam gave Ed Gein. He gave him a high-pitched, slow-speaking sound that wasn't accurate at all. This wasn't what Ed Gein sounded like, and it was strange the way that they decided to go in the direction of it. Steve's performance of Gein's voice, however, was one that was much more similar to the tone of Ed. It was lower, a bit slower, and it just made him come across as an individual that was a little slow to pick up on things and was in his own world. So in that regard, I think the vocal delivery was better from Steve Railsback. When it came to the appearance of the actors, I'd have to say that I think the Netflix depiction looked much more like the real Ed Gein rather than what the movie did. Don't get me wrong, the movie looked okay, but when comparing it to the makeup that was used in the Netflix show, they really managed to get Charlie to embody the killer's appearance really well, even down to the slightly droopy eye that he had. What I would say though is that the age that Hunnam looked when he was arrested didn't quite match when Gein was. He was about 50, and I wouldn't say that at any point Hunnam looked like 50 years of age. Even though he's 45, he just looks quite good for his age, I suppose. One thing that's at the heart of the portrayal of Ed Gein is the sheer frightening nature that he had when he was alone with his body parts, the sick mindset that he had, and also the friendly but strange aura that he'd give off to the people in the neighborhood. Personally, I think Charlie Hunnam did a better job at embodying somebody that had all of those traits. Whether it be the sheer obsession with body parts, the breaking down over realizing that he was responsible for the deaths of 2 women and having no recollection of it, the lost mindset that he had due to his mental illness, and also the lack of control over his behavior because he was being influenced by voices inside of his head. For me, Charlie delivered the strongest performance out of the 2 actors. It was a much more believable depiction of Ed Gein, and I feel we saw an overall darker side to the character because of the way that he was performed. It's just a real shame that they made his voice be that high-pitched mess, because it did often take away from the character. The accuracy, similarities, and differences. Now, this is where both the movie and the show differed quite a lot. Let's first start by looking at the accuracy. First off, within the TV series, there were a ton of inaccuracies, such as added deaths that weren't confirmed, which didn't feature in the movie. The character Adeline and her having a whole story about being romantically involved with Ed and influencing him when that wasn't the case at all. And also the likes of Ed being connected to solving the identity of Ted Bundy, and also writing to Richard Speck. Within the series though, they did have the death of both Mary Hogan and Bernice Worden. However, within the movie, they were carried out slightly differently and in a less accurate way to the way that the series showed them. First off, the death of Mary Hogan in the movie wasn't just carried out in the bar, but instead she was shot, then taken to Gein's house, and once she was there for a while, she ended up slowly dying. This isn't how it was said to have played out in real life, and it obviously was different in the show. She was shot with a pistol in the movie and not a rifle like in the TV series, which is actually closer to the true events as it was said to be a pistol. Within the movie, they focused on the fact that she was perceived to be missing by the authorities for a while as well, which wasn't the case in the TV series. When it came to the death of Bernice Worden, well, there wasn't actually a Bernice Worden in the movie. They instead used somebody called Colette Marshall to represent her. She was the hardware store owner like Bernice Worden, but they didn't use her actual name. This death played out in a similar way to the true events, especially when compared to the series. It was said that Gein was interested in Bernice Worden because she reminded him of his mother, and in the movie, Ed mentioned that. Unlike the series, where there was an intimate relationship between the both of them where they planned on moving in together, this didn't happen in real life, hence why it didn't feature in the movie. Instead, Ed went to buy antifreeze, which was said to have actually happened. Then, on the slip of paper where it mentioned that antifreeze was purchased, the dots were put together due to Ed being spotted needing antifreeze, which then led to Ed being caught. Bernice Worden's body being left exposed in the way that it was after being butchered in his shed was present in both the series and the movie, because that's how she was found. The death of Ed's brother Henry was also carried out in a similar way. In both the series and the movie, Henry spoke of leaving the family home due to disagreeing with their mother's teachings, and following that, Ed hit Henry, in which he died, and then from there, he started a fire to cover it up. This was something that was present in both due to the rumour that Ed was responsible, rather than him actually killing him and it being confirmed. One of the major differences in the movie to the TV series is the fact that Adeline didn't feature at all. Ed spoke of a girlfriend that he once had, but she wasn't mentioned by name. However, in the series, Adeline got a large focus, and most of the story was fabricated and based off of a quote that was given by her to a newspaper journalist, which she later retracted. So her lack of involvement allowed us to focus on Ed just a little bit more. One thing that the movie did differently to the series as well was that it had flashbacks to Ed's childhood, which I thought was particularly interesting. It showed him being exposed to the methods of killing animals, which is something that he later utilised on the likes of Bernice Warden. We also saw the influence of his mother as an ever-present being following her death, where with this mental illness, he was having her telling him to kill the likes of Hoden and Warden for being promiscuous or flirty women in her eyes. This also connected back to the fact that his mother believed women caused the sin of man and the influence of religion was felt by him. So even though it was present in the series, it was just shown in a completely different way. Alongside that, there was an influence of the concentration camps and the atrocities that went on within them and how it impacted Ed's mind, but the likes of Elsa Koch wasn't referenced because she wasn't actually a direct inspiration for him. When it came to his schizophrenia, I actually preferred the way that it was depicted in the movie. Within the series, it was almost animated and things didn't quite feel real to us. However, within the movie, the hallucinations that he had almost felt real, and you bought into the fact that he was in a confused state because it was happening within his reality. In the series, it felt like his mother's influence was this overarching thing that was motivating him to dig up the bodies and also kill the women because he was killing people that reminded him of her and trying to essentially bring her back. Within the movie, she'd quite literally stand there next to him and tell him to kill Mary and Colette, who was Rosemary, so that was another major difference. One similarity that was also present and was made a focus of in the movie, just like in the TV series, was the fact that Ed spent quite a bit of time babysitting for people in his neighborhood. However, unlike the TV series, he didn't kill another babysitter and he also didn't kill two random men in the woods in the movie. So even though both the TV series and the movie have accuracies and inaccuracies, they're both probably far enough away from the truth in completely different ways to say one is more accurate than the other. My review. Now, I was open and honest about the fact that I thought the Netflix series was a bit of a miss, especially when compared to the likes of the Dharma show that aired a couple of years ago. However, this movie definitely isn't that much better, if at all better than the TV series. What I think the movie got right that the show lacked is the overall tone that it should have adopted. The movie was quite dark, had a sense of realism to it, and there was this underlying dirtiness that was ever present. The Netflix show started off like that with episode 1, and then as the episodes unfolded, it just became a bit glossy and it lost direction in the tone that it was going for. Plus, all of the other stories that were going on due to the inspiration of Ed Gein kind of took away from the overall plot, so it became a bit confusing. Plus, I also wasn't a fan of the fact that they tried to make us feel sorry for him at the end. I'd also say that Ed Gein Story didn't necessarily warrant an 8-episode series. That's why the TV series felt fluffed out with lots of other things, so I think the form of a movie worked a lot better than what an 8-episode series did. I said at the start which depiction of Ed Gein I thought worked better, and I definitely think that it was Charlie Hunnam's. It was more convincing when it came to the type of mindset that Ed Gein had, and the strange, lost mind that he had. Overall, I think they're both versions of events that will get across the gist of what Ed Gein was like as a person and as a killer. From the influence that his mother had on him, to him robbing the graves, creating furniture out of skin and bones, and then the eventual killing of Mary and Bernice. Both the movie and series aren't 100% truthful, they don't delve into the trials, and they both exaggerate events from the real story, ultimately falling short of proving to be really engaging pieces of entertainment. So, there you have it, the Ed Gein Netflix show versus the Ed Gein movie. If you want to see why I think the Netflix depiction was a bit of a mess, or also how accurate it was, then check the videos below. Have you seen the 2000 movie before? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.